Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to create basically a one-page web page like this using Dreamweaver CC. So I'm going to open Dreamweaver, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go create new file, make sure it's on HTML5 down here for doc type, and I hit create. Actually, I already had one there, and then the next thing I always do is I save my page. So I'm going to call this accessibility. In this case, I have a place on my computer folder called websites. My site definition is set up in a folder called edtech2, and I'm going to save this in a folder called 502. Okay, I'm just going to add a title here. I think the example actually, if I look at it, so it says accessibility hot links. It could easily be any one of these, but I like to give a title right away because that's something I forget about. So the next thing I do is I like to go to split view, and especially for those of you who have created a couple of these so far, I basically set up the structure of my page using sorry, I thought it was in code view, using a couple HTML5 tags. So you can always go over to the insert panel, and let's bring that all the way up, and I can insert a div this way. You can always go over to the insert panel and insert a div this way. So in this time I'm going to call this container. But another way, and I'm going to get rid of this text, is you can always go up through here and insert from, I believe it's structure. But what I often do is I'll just hand code it just because it's easier. So in this case, I'm going to have a nav after my header, then a section. Then I'm going to have a footer. And just like that, I've set up the structure of my page. And so I'm going to go over and take some of my content that I already have set up. There it is. And sometimes the formatting when you copy and paste gets a little strange, but that's fine. I'm going to go down here and copy my footer text. And I can even do that over here if I wanted to, right? In this case, I should always update this. And then for the navigation, or rather up in the header, I have this text. And so I often will then open Notepad or any text editor to strip the code if I want. I can also copy paste into the browser like that, and that strips it. It's a real lazy but fast and effective way of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to put those links down there. So basically all I'm doing right now is getting my text set up to make the rest of this pretty fast. I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to basically do shift return or shift enter, and that basically puts a break tag, right? So that's looks good. Learner description, I'll actually have a full paragraph. Okay, so this looks good. Now I'm going to just do a couple more things. We're going to make my main title in H1. I'm going to make these other headings H2. So let's go back and see that there's two more after that. Oops. Tips and tools. Alright, so right now I basically have the HTML done. So I've created my page. I'm going to save it. And at this point, it's never a bad idea to actually go down and validate and just check how your code is looking. It allows you to see if there's any errors. So far, I don't have any. Okay, so now this is where we're going to use the CSS designer to add some CSS. This is definitely done very differently than old versions of Dreamweaver. So if you've used other versions, this kind of takes getting used to. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click this plus sign for sources, and I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to browse, and then I'm going to call this Oops. Accessibility. In this case, I should have a folder for my styles. I do. So I'm going to add that there, so that looks good. So also be aware that you can, with the CSS designer, if you bring it wide enough, it turns into this two-column thing, which some people like. So now basically I can look at this and try to get a basic idea of, all right, this is kind of the color scheme or the look, the feel that I'm going to go for. And I'm not going to try to do that exact page, but rather show you how to do something such as that. So I'm going to click on body tag. First thing you always do is click on the style sheet you want to use. I use media, I leave that alone. And this is essentially if you had multiple style sheets for multiple devices. We're not doing that right now. Selector, I always have to select that. In this case, it thought I wanted the paragraph tag, but I don't. I want just the body tag. And really what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go down and I'm going to set my text for the whole page. So I'll just use Gotham, and I'll say that my basic font size for the page will be 15 pixels. And then I'm going to add a background. And actually what I'll do is I'll take a look at, just so we kind of have some of this the same. Background color looks like in this one that I created before. So I'll just use that same background color. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Then my next thing is I kind of work my way in and I work on my container. So I got to make sure each time click on the CSS, I hit the plus sign, and then I click over on properties. Or if you have the narrower version, it's just a matter of clicking down here. So now let's go. Actually, where did I have that? Down here. Let's take a look at container so I can get the background here. So I click here, and this just basically scrolls me up and down faster. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up, and a couple other things I'm going to do is I'm going to set a fixed width for this of 960. I'm going to go down. I'm going to do my margin, and this I always find weird with this new CSS designer, but type in auto where you see the 0 and get rid of the pixel, and that's basically going to center it. Then I'm going to basically add 10 pixels, and if I start up top, I can hit 10, tab, 10, tab, 10, and I already had that. So alright. Okay, so far so good. I can also make sure container selected. I'm going to add a border, and let's take a look and see what the border. So the border setup was a double style, which I don't usually actually use that much, but 2 pixels. But if you go down here, you find border, and if you keep going down, you'll find you first set up the border color. And you notice it adds it for all of these, but then you go down here and you want to choose border width. I often will choose 1 pixel. And then border style, you choose, I'm going to just go with solid. Okay, so now I'm going to save this. Just going to start working down here. So then I basically have my H1. So if I click on that, I click accessibility, click the plus sign, and it always likes to be very specific. For these simple pages, I like it nice and clean in general. Right, so I just want all H1 tags, and I know I'm not going to have a lot of them, so that works for me. I'm just copying the color here. So if I click on the font, it scrolls me down to where I want. I type in my color. In this case, font family. A lot of times I can go with any one of these, but if I select something and it's not exactly what I want, a quick and easy way is I can come over here and be like, actually, what I want is Verdanda to be the first one. Right? And so that looks good. And so now that I've clicked out, I got to go back where I click this, accessibility. I got to find H1, which is what I was working on, and then I could keep adding text. In this case, I'm fine with this for now. I'm going to go down to my next, my H2. Got to hit accessibility, plus sign, click down to properties, and let's see how we have this set up. So there's two things here. I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this background color because I'm going to show you how to add that, and then the color itself is white. So click on this. So for the font, I'm going to add that, but right now that's going to be poor contrast. But if I go down to background color, sorry, let's try that again. What you see is basically that. Now, I could play with some padding here if I wanted to, give it some space. Never a bad idea. Same thing with margins, is you could always, let's go, here we go. I could always say, I want 15 pixels of space at top, right? Let's go with more like 25. And then below, maybe I want 15. Right? That's just an easy way, and I'm going to actually bump this up to 30 to improve your proximity as it kind of builds in that chunking. Same thing, I could just add some basic space. So let's see, and sometimes when you start clicking away, you can lose what you were doing. So I got to go back. And this is more me just getting used to CSS Designer. You guys might be pros at this. Okay. So far, so good. Let's save this, and let's take a look. So we'll preview it in Firefox, different browser. So I'm going to bring it up first over here. And there it is here. So definitely a little different. We'll work on a couple things up here real quick, but that's the basic idea. The line spacing I think is a little different, and we want to build in some name acres and do the footer. So we'll jump now to the footer. General things with footers, what I do is, so I click the tag I want, make sure accessibility, click the plus sign. I tend to do a couple things always with footers. One of them is I usually will center align it, and I usually will make my font smaller. Sometimes I will often make it a different color. So bring that over here. We'll try that. We'll do font size. And you could just go small and then do center. And that's what that looks like. And then if I wanted to, I could also put in my validation badges. And actually, I should have these saved. So let's go to insert. And we'll later check and make sure this, but while we're working in the footer. And it actually looks like I don't have any saved, but not a problem. One way that you can always do this is once you have it uploaded, you can always copy the image address. So this is the issue always with adding images this way is if the image from the site that you're copying it from is updated or the image is no longer there, then you have that issue there. Actually, we'll just hand code it because it's. And this is more than anything right now, what I'm wanting you to see is how this looks. Let's see what I did wrong there. So basically, that's the downfall whenever you're entering in code directly, is that if you make one little error, it can mess things up. So actually what I'll do here, just to be faster, so I'm going to copy this code. And then I'm going to update, that image address. once again, the idea here is not for you to follow this along this step, but rather see how I'm, from a design point of view, setting up. So I have these here. You want to make sure that you have alt text for these. So and then you later want to actually make sure that your code is valid, because if not, that's probably the biggest problem. So a couple other things that we'll do is, let me see, we can focus on, if I go to, and I believe, and if you're never not sure, it's easy to check here, but I believe if I want it to look closer like this, is that my body, is that we have a line height and a color in the example. So if I was going to do something like that, I'm setting up a line height and a color for my basic body font. And that looks more like what we have. Okay, so now a couple other things I'll point out is how to style the learner description. So with something like that, I can go over to learner description, and you can do this in two orders. Right now I'm doing it in a different order than previous videos. I'm just going to type in class learner, and nothing happened yet. But then when I come over here and I select style sheet, and when it gives me this, I'm going to type in period learner. Let's try that again. I'm going to hit the plus sign. And then down here, this is where I can go and I can basically style that differently. So maybe I want it to be red, and I could change the font, I could change the font size. So in this case, maybe I want the font to be 13 pixels, which actually would be a little small, but it works for here. And you see that it automatically applied that style. So then the next thing that we want to do is we want to add named anchors that are going to basically link down to these, and this would go back up. Now with named anchors, they've changed this with, I wanted to show you because it's actually not there like previous versions. And so if you Google anything, pretty much anything, right, you can find things that you need related to web development. So this is saying that, in previous versions you used to be able to go to insert named anchor. You can't now. So what they're basically arguing is that what you need to do is add an ID to certain things, and then you can basically link to it with, a pound sign or a hashtag. So if we go by that logic, we should be able to add an ID equals what? And then you basically go up to here, and this is where you make this, and you add what. So now let's save all, and let's preview. We'll do this one in Safari. So now that's the way it works. So this was real quick and easy, but it shows you basically how to create a web page like this using Dreamweaver CC. Thanks.